All right, this is Ace and Beaky, and apparently I have a lot of orange energy that needs to go through my mouth today. Again, as I like to say, I kind of rehash old controversies because I'm kind of waiting for the dust to settle. I probably have my opinion when it happens, but I've also caught myself believing one side of the story and then being made a fool whenever I realize something else has happened. So even though I'm probably going to lean more one way, even after I hear both sides of the story, I kind of like to wait for the dust to settle so I can accurately look at something without being caught up in the moment of, new car smell, oh, it's beautiful. Oh, wait, I just realized this film had an agenda. Now I'm pissed off. Because it's like, yeah, when I watched The Last Jedi with some friends, I thought I said it was kind of cool, but then whenever I sat down and heard some people pick it apart, they began to kind of win me over. So, my thing is today is that we're going to talk about the statement about the Force is female. This is kind of an interesting thing, and I want to show it out there and throw out some nuance. The Force actually lacks personality. As far as a religion goes, the Force has less of a personality behind it than the Abrahamic faith, where Yahweh is a very masculine, patriotic God with a personality and feelings. Or the Greek Olympians, whose divine godly beings, whose gods were actually very human but superpowered. And the thing is, there's other religions where the religion is more of a spiritual force than it is a one aspect with a personality. And there's other people's religions where the religion is a very individualistic person or group of people that are very stand on their own and have emotions and all that. And then there's also religions that are all of the above. Like there can be religions where nature is kind of seen as a force, but it's kind of a feminine force that sometimes manifests itself into a personality, but kind of like ice, it'll melt back into the water. And there's other, the Greek religions kind of had a mixture of that. They were like polytheistic, but they also had certain minor gods, and they also had a main god and all that. And the Roman Catholic Church basically tried to fuse a decaying paganism with a rising Christianity, and so they just basically replaced all of the lesser gods with angels and saints. But the thing is, no offense to Catholics, but the thing is that the thing with the Force is that, from what I understand, the Force is meant to be religion's best. Mark Hammil said that. George Lucas is a Buddhist. If you listen to him, a lot of the stuff they say sounds vaguely Buddhist. And maybe some of the rhetoric is something that we're familiar with. Like maybe whenever some people, like a more mystical version of Judaism, they referred to God as a life force. There's different ways that people can artistically talk about their God. Constantine was kind of trying to draw a bridge between the sun god and Christianity with some of his rhetoric, kind of saying it's like, my worship of this sun god, that was like the unenlightened version, but this is the real deal. But it's like my version was an echo of it, so it at least has some in common, right? Right, guys? I'm a politician. But the thing is that with Constantine, from what I understand about the Force is, the Force is meant to be religion's best, with a huge emphasis on Buddhism. It has rhetoric from other religions, but I kind of think that individual Jedi and individual readers and individual authors can treat the Force like a banana split. The banana and the ice cream is always going to be Buddhist, but the toppings can vary from person to person. I think that the way and this has been seconded by some other people. One's an article I read whenever they found Star Wars for the first time. And they wrote an article about Star Wars when it first came out in 1977. And their take on it was colored by their own experiences and points of view. So, they had an interesting choice of words that weren't outright wrong, but as Star Wars evolved, it kind of seemed to evolve in a different area. Based on somebody just seeing the original Star Wars for the first time in 1977, their take on it was that the Empire was a space age Camelot, that Darth Vader was a vaguely, fallen angel figure, which isn't completely off, and that they said that whenever Obi-Wan talked about the Force, to them it came off like a cross between early church Christianity and ESP. And you know what? If this goes along with my theory that if the Force is meant to be religion's best with a huge emphasis on Buddhism, then it's the base of it is the same for people, but the trappings vary from person to person. So the thing is that with the Force, it could be that even though they're all worshiping the same religion and they're all in touch with the Force, even if there's a slightly different denomination of it, like the wills of the Force, they like the Force to use them instead of them using the Force. You know, that guy on Rogue One that was blind, his take on the Force is you believe in it, but you kind of let it guide you and use you instead of you trying to control it in a respectful relationship like what the Jedi do. Obi-Wan Kenobi's take on the Force, back at the 1977 when it first came out, at least one person said that some of the rhetoric reminded him of early church Christianity and ESP. I actually can kind of see where that pops up again. I read the novelization of Revenge of the Sith, and Obi-Wan Kenobi, whenever he was talking about new force powers, he refers to a new force power called a new gift of the Force. That kind of sounds like the early church talking about gifts of the Spirit. And some people have even made analogies between ESP and psychic powers and gifts of the Spirit in the New Testament with the early church. So the thing is that it's a fictional religion and a fictional universe. It's not really meant to be taken the wrong way. A lot of times when something is spiritual, the more etheric and spiritual side is associated with femininity. There's nothing wrong with that. Some of the Gnostic takes on the Holy Trinity is that the Holy Spirit is female, and that basically that the Trinity is one person, is like, you can see the Trinity as one God or as three gods, but it's just basically like the same, different sides of the same person. But that the Holy Spirit, or at least its translations, might have implied that it was feminine. If it wasn't a feminine being, then it was like the feminine side of the Godhead. But the thing is that, so there's something to be said about that. But at the end of the day, Star Wars, the Force, once you acknowledge that it's meant to be religion's best with Buddhism first and foremost, then after that, once you give that huge chunk to it, once you've ordered the banana split, once you've ordered the sundae, then the toppings are up to you. And not only are the toppings up to you, the toppings are up to the characters you write and you read about. I can see how Obi-Wan, based on how they talked about it in that article, based on how the rhetoric Obi-Wan used in a quote in the Revenge of the Sith novelization, and just based on kind of like how Obi-Wan Kenobi looks like a crusader and somebody from the Civil War and in ancient Roman time, I can kind of see how somebody could say that Obi-Wan Kenobi's manifestation of the Force has echoes of early church Christianity, ESP, and between me and another person, one quote that Obi-Wan Kenobi said sounded just vaguely like Scientology whenever he said the Force was just as much scientific as it was spiritual. That being in touch with the Force, it was involved in such things like painting pictures and even making love, or as well as serious stuff too. So whenever he said that the Force was just as much scientific as it was spiritual, some people, at least one person that I met, and me, the way that he said that did kind of make somebody think, is there maybe a dash of Scientology in Obi-Wan Kenobi's take on it? But look, whenever you watch Star Wars, you see in the Clone Wars there's so many Jedi that have different forms. And like this one green-skinned lady, she looks like her outfit is like a mixture between a Catholic nun and a Muslim woman. And whenever you see this one, it looks like their outfit is very inspired by East Asian. And this outfit looks kind of Greek with yoga pants on. So the thing is that, like I said, once you acknowledge that the Force is primarily Buddhist and is meant to be the best of religion, then you can add all the little toppings that you want, because it won't change what it is. It'll just be the little toppings sprinkled on top of it. So is the Force female? It can manifest itself in a way that can remind you of being female, but it's a fictional universe and it's meant to As the movie says, bind us together. It's meant to be something that we can get behind. And that's what's really sad about Star Wars being used as something divisive. Look how happy Star Wars made people when it first came out. Look at all the happy families that showed up. Look at how it was a huge phenomenon, a reflection of our values that weren't being bent out of shape by identity politics and tribalism, left or right. Look at it. Look at how it brought people together. It was spiritual without being specifically religious, meaning that anybody of any religion could get something out of it, just like philosophy. You are a lover of wisdom. It means you can get wisdom from different religions. Even if you favor one religion as how I live or what's going to get me to heaven, the thing is that if you take a philosophical and spiritual approach, even if you can't cheat on your religion, you can be distant friends with other forms of wisdom in the sake of finding wisdom. And so other forms of spirituality in the sake of finding wisdom, especially when you start comparing where they parallel. So the thing is that rather than using Star Wars to divide people, use it to bring people together, make people happy, and leave good memories in people's childhoods and families. I understand that's what some people say that they're trying to do. A lot of people on the right and in the fandom are saying that's what they're trying to preserve. And a lot of people in the left and Hollywood elite and feminists are saying that's what they're trying to do for a new generation of girls. But neither of y'all speak for everybody. You make good points, but neither of y'all speak for everybody. So the thing is that don't use Star Wars to divide people. Look at the good stuff that we can learn about it. Look at it from a philosophical and a spiritual point of view. Compare stuff with Star Wars about what we can learn about history. If that kind of spills over to some things that might be about real world politics, hey, maybe it can. But watch where you go with that. Some liberals like to talk about how what's wrong with Star Wars is a reflection of how we're going to lose democracy to right-wingers and white supremacy. And it's like, well, yeah, that's one way it could go. But there's also something to be said about the Galactic Empire being big government invading people's lives, and that the Rebel Alliance is made up of a bunch of spiritual people with guns and hunters camouflage. And the Wookiees look like hairy rednecks. So, there's probably, the rebels are probably more based off of hippies, but at the same time, whenever the people in green look like hunters, and whenever the people in orange flight suits kind of look like NASCAR racers, there's something meant for everybody in Star Wars, okay? It's a bunch of spiritual family unit gun owners going against a big out-of-control government. Because Star Wars is more up versus down and right versus wrong than it is left versus right. It's more freedom versus tyranny than it is liberal versus conservative. It's more good versus evil than it is, feminist versus fandom. Try to keep that in mind. All right, this is Ace and Beaky over and out.